Welcome to Dr Joe Unplugged. This podcast contains general information and is not in any way medical advice. It is good to have goals in life. Targets, on the other hand, can be somewhat dual-edged. There's a lot of discussion at times around how we should be measuring exercise. Is it good to count the number of steps? Is it good to count the number of minutes? Now, personally, and you've probably heard me say this before, any amount of exercise is better than nothing, and depending upon your circumstances, you've got to work out what actually is suitable for you. And if you haven't been doing much exercise, then at whatever level you can start is good, and then you can build it up gradually. But the debates rage around at what level does one get benefit? And I reiterate, in my opinion, at any level beyond zero, you're getting some benefit. Sure, there's the more you do, you will get more benefit, but there also is a point, and we see this also with professional athletes, there's a point at which you can take a good thing too far and it can become counterproductive. Now, most of us, it's probably fair to say, are not in any imminent danger of hitting that point, but some people are. Some people do take it too far, and that can lead to injury, it can lead to fatigue, people can burn out. And we know with professional athletes that they will have rest times, they will have days when they don't train. It's all really highly measured and monitored. Now, for those of us looking just to maintain our health and keep fit, obviously we don't need to measure and monitor to that degree. But the targets that are quoted is 150 minutes per week, and the other one, of course, is the famous 10,000 steps per day. Now, unfortunately, like a lot of accepted wisdom in inverted commas, the 10,000 steps per day wasn't actually done from any particular scientific trial. It was a marketing campaign in Japan in 1960 for a pedometer, which is a device that counts your steps. So to promote it, they said 10,000 steps a day. A little bit like breakfast is the most important meal of the day. There's no scientific basis to that. It was a marketing campaign by Kellogg's. But eventually people forget the origins of it and just take it as read. So it's good to set those targets. Look, it's good to aim for 2.5 hours exercise per week. Absolutely, not going to knock it. The problem, and the same as your 10,000 steps per day. However, the problem becomes people can end up thinking, well, if I can't reach that level, then it's almost like a threshold. Under that level, it's not going to help me. I have to reach that level. And for some people, and it's wrong, but it's unfortunate, but it still happens. And this is because of the messaging from the powers that be, which most of you will know my views on how big public health operates. You can be left with the impression, well, look, if I can't reach this target, then there's not really any point in me even trying. And that is absolutely the wrong conclusion to draw, but it's the one that, sadly, people can be led to. So this work actually tried to figure out, are these targets useful or not? And an analysis of 14,399 women, and this is information from the Division of Preventive Medicine at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. They analysed data from the Women's Health Study, which ran for 12 years between 1992 and 2004. Now, this women's health study was famous in the early 2000s for essentially stopping the widespread use of hormone replacement therapy, which from the mid-80s until around about 2001 had been recommended to virtually all women from the time they reached menopause until they left the planet. And it's probably the only time in my career that I've seen medical practice change overnight. We went from everybody to nobody. We've now reached a slightly more reasonable point in the middle. But anyway, this study found out, and most of these women were aged over the age of 62, but again, it doesn't mean that it might not apply in other age groups or that it doesn't apply to males. A median amount of 62 minutes exercise per week with a median daily step count of 5,183 was associated with lower mortality and reduced risk for cardiovascular disease. Now, that is about half the number of 10,000, obviously 5,183, and 62 minutes is, if we want to do the maths fairly quickly, about 40-something% of the 150 minutes. Now, it is fair to say that in this analysis, they did find that those who were doing a little bit more did get greater benefit. But the statistical, and we always have to be a bit wary with statistics when it's applied to the individual, but what they're saying really at these lower levels, people were living longer and had lower rates of heart disease. Now they state here, patients who participated in the recommended 150 minutes had a 32% lower mortality risk. Those with over 7,000 steps had a 42% lower mortality risk. So again, there was some improvements with more exercise, but what we don't know is maybe the women who were doing more exercise already were healthier because they might not have had medical conditions that crimped or reduced their capacity to exercise. These are all the unknowns. And whilst data on 14,000 plus people is useful, the problem with it is is that it can't really be applied to the individual. Because there are 8 billion people on the planet and there are no two that are exactly the same. And also, look, an endpoint of cardiovascular disease is good, but there are obviously other conditions that people can get. So what does all this really mean? It means that exercise is good for us, and we know that. And we also know that until fairly recent times, we didn't, and when I say fairly recent times, we're talking probably about the last 50 years or so, certainly the last 100 years, our ancestors didn't have to go to the gym. I mean, there weren't any, but they didn't have to go there because to get from A to B generally required some physical activity. Most people didn't have cars, and a lot of people didn't even have bicycles. You did have to walk, and if you did have a push bike, you can use that. A lot of work was manual work. Now, it's great that we don't have to do that necessarily anymore, but it means we become more sedentary. It's estimated that between 1965 and 2010, the amount of calories not used up just in incidental activity was about 2,000 per week. So this includes not having to get up to change the TV channel. You can use remote control, not having to wash dishes because we put them in the dishwasher, not having to hang out clothes because we're putting them in the dryer. Maybe we've got an automatic vacuum cleaner. We've got obviously remote controls to open the garage. Now that's a good thing. If it's raining and you come home, you don't have to get out of the car. It makes our lives better. But there's never such a thing as a free lunch. So even without formal exercise, the amount of incidental movement in our day has been reduced. So what can we do? Number one, look to do some regular exercise. Now, whether you enjoy walking or riding a bike or swimming or going to the gym, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're doing it on a regular basis and that you're looking just to gradually increase till you reach your plateau level. So it's not like you have to keep increasing forever. Once you've reached an amount per week that works for you, then you can increase your reps, for example, in the gym. You might run a bit faster if you're out running. So there's ways of tweaking it. But, eventually you reach a point where you're good and you can maintain that level. Number two is we can look for more incidental activities in our day rather than trying to fight it out for the nearest shopping car, nearest car park at the mall. You can park further away. Again, if it's raining, look, maybe that's not the day to do it. If it's undercover, then it doesn't really matter. We can look to increase some incidental activity. We can take the stairs, rather than taking the elevator or the escalator. We can even walk up the escalator. If you're at the airport, maybe don't use the travelator. So there's lots of little things that we can do that increase our activity through the day. There's quite a bit we can be doing in terms of exercise. There are lots of options. The most important thing, and there was a marketing slogan some years ago, I won't give the company a plug, but you're all familiar with the term just do it. I think that really remains fairly useful advice. Thanks for listening to Dr. Joe Unplugged. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like and share. You can also follow it on all the socials. There'll be new content uploaded each week.